Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're so glad you could join us tonight. We have a lot of stuff to get through. And the very first thing we have to get through is our name change for the retreat itself. Mark's going to talk about that.
Yeah, well, a lot of you in the audience may remember that we were called the St. Jude Retreats for decades.
20 years.
Yeah, a long time. And we've gone, then we switched it to the Freedom Model Retreats when we published the book, because we wanted everything to be cohesive between the model, what we teach, and the facility itself. And what we found is that people were having trouble finding us because there was a lot of awareness of in the public eye of St. Jude Retreats.
And that we were like the original non-12-step program.
Yeah. And
so when people started looking for, the original non-12-step program, St. Jude Retreats, they couldn't find us anymore. So while we're not a religious organization, the Freedom Model is, anybody who's read the book knows it's completely not religiously based at all, not spiritual, none of that. We have our reasons for the St. Jude name, which are personal to us.
Yeah. Let me talk about that.
Okay.
The St. Jude name came because he's my patron saint, and I'm Catholic. So way back in the day when I was hopeless myself, when I was 19 years old, I prayed to St. Jude, and that was the beginning of me coming up with the idea for the term non-12-step, actually. Mm-hmm. And so it's a very personal thing. It has nothing to do with what we do. It has to do with my relationship with my religion. And so St. Jude is something that's dear to me. And then it became synonymous with the non-12-step movement. And so that's that. So we kept getting people saying, geez, I couldn't find you. Yep. I wasn't looking for the Freedom Model Retreat. I was looking for St. Jude's. And on the web, when you change something like that, your old brand kind of goes away.
Yeah, it starts to fall away. It didn't initially. We kind of rode a wave for a while, not realizing that, when you have thousands of people go through your retreat and you rely on some of that referral stuff, which I think we underestimated how much we get from referrals.
Yeah, we had
it's
over
a lot.
It is a lot. It is a lot, because it's such a great experience for people that they talk about it.
Yeah, we had over 7,000 people come through our retreat with that name, and then all of a sudden we got rid of the name. Not the smartest move. So anyway, you're going to see that our websites it'll say the St. Jude Retreats, developers of the Freedom Model, and because that's how it happened. And
that is how it happened.
So just be aware of that.
Not religious. The other reason we changed it was because there was a lot of people that were like, oh, people think you're religious. So we were trying to, make sure that we didn't exclude anybody. So it's important to know that we're not religious, that name is just personal to us. That's it. And so the St. Jude Retreat is back.
Okay.
I think a lot of people are happy about that. The other thing we have to discuss before we start is Mark and I are actually going to be at a conference at Rutgers University. It's actually at the Hilton Doubletree in Somerset, New Jersey. It's for a summer school on alcohol studies. And the conference we're at is like a keeping up with the times kind of conference, like changing the paradigm, which Stephen went to one of those recently in New York.
It was great.
It was great, but we're going to this one at Rutgers, and my guess is they don't kind of want to change. Like, we're going to be way advanced of what they're talking about this week, but we're really excited to do that.
Now we're going to be giving away books. We're going to be giving away Freedom Model for the Family, Freedom Model, obviously brochures and things like that. But really what we want to do is get the message out that there's a completely different way to look at addiction and to look at how people can move past that. What's going to be interesting is it's based in Rutgers that teaches addiction studies in the conventional sense. So we're going to kind of
we're gonna call their bluff on the whole keeping up with the times nonsense. That's what we're gonna do.
It just came to mind. Is that the place that has the R. Brinkley Smithers Center, or no?
No.
Okay.
No,
that's in New York.
There was some connection to Rutgers and very early alcoholism, like spreading of the disease concept, and I don't know exactly what it was.
They have like a school of alcohol studies.
Yeah, maybe there is a connection there that I didn't know about. Well, we'll see.
Yeah, we're gonna figure it out. All right. All right. Well, let's get to our questions. So the very first question is, which is kind of, well, it's up all of our alley. My son doesn't want to go to rehab or treatment facility. I've actually had this question recently too. How could your private instruction program help him deal with his issues with alcohol and cocaine? Well, go ahead, Steven.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are skeptical of that because you think of rehab, right? And it really is an interesting thing when people think so much about rehab and that is what you do when you have an addiction. But even in the traditional model, something like 90% of the treatment that's happening is outpatient, right? It's still only a tiny percentage of people are going away to like a Betty Ford or a Karen Foundation or anything like that, right? So, but the first thing that pops into people's mind is that a person needs to be away in a facility. And that's, first of all, not always the case. There's good reasons to do that. There's benefits to going away somewhere. You take a break, you're separated from all this normal crap going on in your life, and you're able to focus. And that's why we like the retreat setting here. I'm at the retreat right now, by the way. You guys know that, people viewing up. I have so much fun here with the guests, and they made me coffee, iced coffee, and we play games. I think some of them are actually right now. I love the retreat. I think it's great. But the core of the freedom model is that alcohol and drug use is a voluntary activity, right? At every level, which means that changing it is a matter of really decision-making. And decision-making is a matter of what? Knowledge, ideas, your view of the various options that you have in front of you. So any way that you can effectively deliver the right information to people, you can help them. And for some people, they will diligently attend their online classes. They'll learn some things, and it'll start affecting their decisions. And they'll start thinking, maybe I can make a change and try it out and test it. There's no guarantee, obviously, with the retreat, the book, or the online classes that anybody is going to do that. But you have to get them the right information, and you have to get them engaged and talk to them. And that's what we do. And, if your son, was this somebody asking for their son?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. If your son is just dead set against it in any possible fashion, yeah, maybe he won't listen. And maybe, but if he has an inkling of curiosity, he'll get involved and he'll read and he'll listen to what we're talking about and think about it. And the great thing about what we do, especially when it's with a son, I mean, we're usually thinking younger here, although we know it's not always that, right?
No, it isn't.
Is that we don't come at people like you have to quit. And people are so sick of that, of being just told you have to quit.
Yeah.
We come to them with, hey, it's your life. How good is this working out for you? What do you like about it? What might you like about change? And presenting it in that way, as we do in both the retreat and in the online classes, people are open to learning. As soon as you can get them to listen, they become very open to what we're saying. So
I want to talk about that a bit. People initially, when they hear about private instruction, it's a surprising reaction.
Yeah.
You get people who say, is that, they call about the retreat, let's say. And then they say, well, maybe I can't afford it or something. I said, well, there's private instruction options as well. And they go, is that possible? You know, because when you've been taught that rehab is the only way, it's sort of, that's the only way. And here's what's interesting. As soon as somebody starts private instruction, it kicks in this idea that, oh, I'm capable. I'm capable. You trust me. And I'm capable. And that sets up a whole different series of expectations for themselves. And they're successful. People can get past addiction. And what's ironic is in the freedom model, we show over and over and over again that people move on from this, even without treatment, whether they're treated or not.
Most people without treatment at all, they're never going to a facility.
Right. So that's just a simple fact. And knowing that, of course, private instruction would be helpful. Of course, depending on what you're teaching them. Go ahead, Michelle.
No, you guys pretty much said it all. I think somebody that doesn't want to go, what I say to parents when they call about this is, there's a couple reasons why somebody doesn't want to go to a rehab or doesn't want to go to treatment. And one is, even if they haven't been, they know somebody that has been and they've heard stories and they're thinking it doesn't work. It's an unpleasant experience. I'm not willing to go down that road. And I don't agree with it. I've been to 12-step meetings. I don't agree with it. So what I say is, well, have them watch a video, have them look at our website, read what we have. We send them the ebook. So that they know unequivocally we're totally different, and we're not going to come at them. I think Steve said it. They're not going to come at them telling them what to do with their lives.
That's huge.
So that's what I usually say is, yes, private instruction can help. And for some, it's a stepping stone, and they realize, oh, maybe I want to check out the retreat.
Yep.
If that's something that they feel they need. So, all right, the next question is, after reading, this is a good question. After reading your book, they're all good questions, by the way. I've decided to abstain from drinking alcohol. It's been a tremendous 8 months, and I'm so thankful for that. The problem is my kids are always worried about triggering me. Let's do the little air quote. When we are at family functions or restaurants, and are always weird about drinking around me. How do I get them to understand that their choices don't mean that I have to drink?
I'll tell you, this is a pretty common thing. People will walk on eggshells for a period of time. And I'm not so sure that you can stop that in the beginning, because when you've been a drinker, they're shell shocked, right? I mean, they've been living with a drinker for maybe years, and they're terrified that mom is going to go back to drinking or whatever, because frankly, kids nowadays are taught that it's a chronic relapsing brain disease. Right? So,
from young ages.
Yeah, from grade school on now, this lie is being told to children over and over again. So it sets up an expectation. I think really there's two things that you can do. One is you can have a frank conversation over and over saying you don't have to worry.
Right.
And the other is time. Actions speak louder than words. And when there will come a day where they'll go, Mom is okay. It really is okay. Humans are very resilient. Kids are very resilient, and they pick up on things, and they're very smart. So if you really have your shit together, they're going to know that.
You can also give them the family book.
Yeah.
The Freedom Model for the Family. And just let them know, look, this is what I've learned. This is what I've read here. You read this. It's a much shorter book, so it's not so intimidating.
Yep. And
it'll give them a really good overview of what you've done and why you're okay.
And explain why you're okay, right?
Yeah.
So this person who asked this question has gotten over the drinking problem, right?
Yep.
And
abstain.
And so probably the state of things, she didn't write something where she's worried about she's going to relapse. She's bothered that other people think she's going to relapse or whatever, right? So
it is annoying.
She's in a state of what?
It is annoying.
It is? Oh, yeah. No.
Yeah. It's totally annoying.
But what I'm trying to get at is she probably has that same peace of mind that we have, where it's like, what are you talking about? I don't ever want to drink like that again. I just know. Yeah. And so you need to demonstrate that peace of mind, like how it is in your mind. It's like with me, there's nothing that could ever trigger me to, there's, and I just know that. And when people have made such comments, I kind of laugh at them. When people have offered me drugs over the years, I was like, no, I don't really do that. Or whatever. And they're like, oh, and then I was like, no, don't worry. There's like, it's, I just, I'm never going to be that person running around shooting up again. Like, I just know that, and so you need to demonstrate that peace of mind that you have.
Yeah. Actually, we talked about this in class today, and I used an example of, have you ever had something that you really loved and then you didn't love it anymore? You changed your preference.
Yeah, that's huge. It's shocking to me how many times in class, because now we're teaching at the retreats, right? Steve, Michelle, and I are teaching the students, and
which is so fun. It's awesome.
It's awesome. It's the roots of what we did for decades.
Yeah.
But I'll say, do you know that you can change a preference for drugs? And surprisingly, and I can't believe I'm surprised after doing this for 30 years, but they say, no, I didn't know I could change a preference.
Right. Because
now the disease concept is so driven into our culture, so much more extreme than back in the old days when we started this. I mean, now people do not believe that they have the capacity to ever stop taking drugs.
Even though they know that they've changed preferences for other things.
Yes. And so when you point that out, you watch their eyes light up and they go, oh my God. And that's the way out. That's the way out. It's a wonderful thing to know, I'm not going to like crystal meth for the rest of my life. No, you're not. 98% of the people that do it stop. So you're going to stop. The question is, are you going to stop now? Or are you going to stop in 5 years after you wreck your life a little more? I mean, at some point you're going to get bored and change your preference.
Yeah. It's not. Yeah, it's not as eventually things become not as great as they once were to you.
That's right.
Yeah, so you got to say, I really like the way I'm living now. I'm very happy not drinking.
Yeah,
right? Genuinely.
Right. Yep. All right, here's one that we got. I've read the book twice and I'm still struggling. What value is there in doing private instruction or going to the retreat? Will I just be rereading the book, or am I learning something different?
Well, I can tell you that you're going to learn something different. You can read a book and not get the insights of 30 years of experience helping people. For instance, I have a way to teach that's different than Steve, that's different than Michelle. And so if I have a student where I'm not connecting for some reason, there's two different personalities, two different ways of seeing things. So a lot of times differentiated teaching techniques, which we all have, we have that ability because we've done it for so long. We can hit things from angles and give examples that aren't in the book and show a way that the book is, the book is what the book is.
Well,
and if you're struggling with the book, we can show you a completely different way to see the same concepts.
Well, that's it. I mean, everybody comes into reading whatever they're reading with their own set of ideas and beliefs about themselves, which I think is a lot harder to pick that apart, the beliefs about yourselves and your own abilities. Like, you can read something and know damn well, I did this. I did all the research. When I took a drink again, I didn't drink for almost 20 years. And when I took a drink again, even in spite of everything I knew, I had this weird anxiety about it. And I knew intellectually, I saw all the research, I knew all the data, and intellectually I knew that I could drink and not go back to being the lush that I was, and I still had this weird anxiety, and I still had this doubt in my mind of jails, institutions, and death. I still, there was weird little scripts that played that, is this am I being self-centered?
Right.
So when you talk to one of us, when we take you through the concepts in the book, you get to talk about all that stuff. You get to say, this is the thing that I'm thinking. Is this valid or is it not valid? And this is the question that I had about what I read here. Did you really mean that?
Right.
So you get the benefit of actually talking to the people that wrote it. And at the same time, you get the feedback on, is my thinking this programmed AA disease-based? Because the truth is, even if you haven't been to treatment, if you live in our culture, you're exposed to the disease concept. You're exposed to this idea that you crossed a line where you lost control.
Right.
So sometimes it takes sitting with one of us to pick that apart and figure it out.
Yeah, and you know what? I think something that happens a lot of time with the book is that people hear what they want to hear.
I'm going to bring that up.
Yeah, and the reason that I can talk about the reason why we hear what we want to hear too, and that's a little bit deeper. But you know, for example, my pet project in the Freedom Model was the chapters about drug effects and explaining that a lot of it is illusory, and we give the drugs far more credit than they deserve. And the truth about how good or bad they are and what they can do for you is really somewhere in the middle of what everybody portrays it as. And I really wanted to show how alcohol doesn't relieve stress. That was a big thing because it's for so many of my students, they really think they need alcohol for stress. Some people breeze through those chapters and they maybe don't even pay much attention or read it because they have the preconceived thought that alcohol it only relieves stress temporarily. Yeah, I get it. Boom, boom, boom. You go right past that. Or if they read it, the things that speak to the contrary just go in one ear and right out the other, you know? And so when I get somebody like that in class, it's really great to like, okay, wait, let's slow down. Is it really working temporarily? Let's like really get into that because that's such a big sticking point for so many people. That's what keeps them trapped drinking is they really think they need it to deal with stress and that it is effective. So having that opportunity to talk with them, and we do get calls from people who say, I understand X, Y, and Z about your book. I read it. And then in the midst of that conversation, there's a lot of things they didn't understand. Now, we don't want to understand some of these things because, I mean, we're afraid to let go of our drug, whatever it is, you know? And so depending on how much pressure is on you, sometimes you'll read something just to do it. And you know, but still you're thinking, I have people in my life trying to take away the only thing that makes me happy. And so you just hear what you want to hear. And I hate to say that, like, I hate to say it that way, but that's kind of what happens. And so when you get into the retreat situation or the private instruction, we can really talk those things through and say, did you get what we were really going for there? Like, let's stop and talk about that. And so I think, go ahead.
I wanted to work on that point exactly. One of the things that I had to learn as a teacher was how to listen to a student and pick up the cues. And you just mentioned something that's really important, and that is they will say to me, you know, I don't like drinking. This is the biggest one. Or drugging. I don't like doing heroin. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. For the first 2 days they're with me, how much they hate it. And that they're sitting in front of me as a living example of that not being true. They like it so much, they ended up at our facility for a reason. It didn't happen because they ate too many Twinkies. It's because, you know, they were sticking a needle in their arm over and over and over again or drinking at the bar. So they're telling me they hate it, which isn't true. So I listen to that, and then eventually I might say, listen, you obviously drink a lot, yes? And then we go through that. Well, then the fact that you hate it isn't true. And then they go, yeah, but I don't like it. And now we're having a discussion that's productive. And then we can work from that point. But here's the point is I'm picking up on the fact that they're lying to themselves about this. And their example, their actions speak much louder than their words, but they believe they hate drinking. They believe that, you know, they're looking at the costs and the consequences. And I understand that, but they also are ignoring the benefit that they get, which is what drives them to drink and drug to begin with.
Well, let's talk about why they ignore it, because it's not acceptable.
Exactly.
It's not acceptable. You go, especially if you get somebody that's been to rehab or it's been to AA meetings or whatever. It's not okay to say, I really like this. And so you get these you get these scripts in your head that you begin to believe that, oh, it wasn't all that great and I didn't really like it, but I keep doing it. So now I'm stuck in this cycle of not knowing why I'm doing it. So then people read our book, right? And they read through it and they go, oh, okay. But they kind of skip over the most important component, which is the PDP, which is there is something
that you like
that I like about it. But then they go, what do, Steve? They go to, oh, I like it because it relieves my stress.
Yeah.
So then we have to pick it up.
That's one of the socially acceptable scripts that we've learned.
Yes.
Right.
You have to be drinking for that kind of a reason. And other people are catching on to this too, which is good. Other people besides us. Like when I went to that conference, there were some people saying, hey, people use drugs for reasons. They think that, and that was presented as something totally progressive and shocking, and everybody applauded it. But can you believe that that has to be shocking? We all know that. And Hannah Picard has been talking about this. You and I were watching Hannah Picard's video. She did the same thing, a list of reasons. People are starting to catch on to this because you come into treatment and it all just becomes you're addicted. You hate this stuff, but you're forced to do it because you're addicted. Case closed. And that's not what's going on. But then you get trained to say this stuff and then to believe it. And that's we explain part of that in chapters 8, 9, and 10 about the addict self-image and how you learn that, and the playground effect and all those things that we talk about, where you get lulled into believing I'm doing something that I don't like at all and don't want to do. And that's I've been in that place, really believing. And that's a terrible place to be.
It is.
Yeah, okay. It is. All right. We'll go to the next one. We're getting through these pretty quick. So I'm only not even 7:30. Oh, this is so good. Now, I talked to a great guy who finally found our book, and he read our book, and it totally changed his life. And he called to thank us the other day. And he's a teacher. And so he works with teenagers. And he said, it seems everyone now thinks they know all about addiction, and that I want to give you their advice on what you should do about your addiction. How can I set them straight and let them know I'll be fine without meetings and counseling, without me sounding like I'm a total dick? Because, of course, if I get mad at them, then I'm reinforcing in their minds that I'm just an addict who is still out of control. It's such bullshit.
Oh, God.
So, yeah, it's a good one, right?
Well, it's coming from an AA family, when I started the whole non-12-step idea.
Oh, heresy.
It was, I literally avoided my family. I would go to
You did too.
I would go to family functions and they'd say, "Oh, I hear you're counseling.
Yeah, you're running a rehab.
You're running rehab." And I go,
just like Mom.
Yeah. And I would go, "Oh yeah, it's going good. It's going good." Yeah, because I didn't even want to get into it, because when it comes to people that are close to you, fear and old scripts are the predominant way of interacting, and it's so unhealthy. And
so
but knowing that I was walking into the lion's den, I wasn't about to put myself in front of the bus. So I think it is bullshit, but it's the reality of families in some cases. I came from a heavily AA steeped background, and I just did my own thing. And eventually people caught on, and it all kind of worked itself out. I think it's funny because when you finally do the freedom model, which is basically moving on from an addiction.
Yep.
When you finally do that, patience is, a lot of times underrated. It's really important to be patient with the people around you and know that in time, they're going to see that you're a changed person.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if people are being jerks to you and saying you need to go to meetings and you need to do this, which is what this person's talking about, I'm kind of a fighter. I boxed and stuff. So I'll be like, you're being a dick. So I'm a little bit more forward about things like that. And I say, I'm really okay. And I push back. I don't think there's a cut and dry answer. I think every family adapts the way they can adapt.
Well, I handled it. I've had to handle that stuff. And when I stopped going to meetings and stuff. And the way I handled it was, I don't think that's any of your business. But I said it in a nice way.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a nice way to say, wow, last time I checked, I'm a grown up and I get to decide how I do these things.
That was a nice way of saying it.
That's nice. She can bite, dude.
Probably.
Last time I checked.
It's a lot nicer than it came across.
I love when this is the problem. I love when this is the problem. When the person has gotten over their problem. And it's just like other people are slow to catch on. I mean, I don't want that to be a problem, but a heck of a lot better that you read our book, you found helpful information, and you discovered the changes you wanted to make and happily made them. That's a great thing.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It was a great conversation yesterday. And we get those now more and more frequently. And every time I get them, I'm like, okay, yes, this is why we do what we do. I
want to talk a little bit about a term that seems to help people, and it's in this vein. I've found that since we've published the book and we're teaching people this specific codified message, people love the idea of moving on.
Yeah.
Because moving on is different than recovery, where you're picking up a whole bunch of things to replace your addiction, right?
And to continually battle it.
Right.
Well, you're staying in a cage.
Yeah, you're still in that cage of recovery where you're replacing your addiction with something else. It's almost like, here's your addiction. I need to go over here and distract myself by going to the club, by going to smart meetings, by doing this other method, and then maybe a little harm reduction over here.
Going to the gym.
Going to the gym. It can be a whole variety of things. I'm not picking on those things.
No, and those are, some things are good things.
They are. But wouldn't it be wonderful if every single person out there that's listening knew that they could move on? Now, moving on is different than distracting yourself.
Yes.
When you're 15 years old and you're riding a bicycle to school every day, and then you get your driver's license and you get in a car, you don't get into the car and drive the car because you're trying to escape the bicycle.
Right.
Okay. You go to the car because it's the happier option, and you naturally just forget about the bicycle. Do you understand the difference what I just said? So the guy who's driving his car to get away from his bicycle, that's recovery. Right. That's recovery. I don't want my bike. God, I love that bike. Oh, I don't want that bike. I better get in the car, And what I'm saying is, wouldn't it just be nice to get in the car or get on your motorcycle or just hitchhike somewhere and have some, So there's a whole different way of thinking when you're moving on. I want everybody out there to think about, wow, I can just move on. I can change a preference. I can see it as the happier option, and I can move on. I don't have to be in recovery or be defined as a person in recovery. If you're a person in recovery, that means you're still addicted.
Right.
Because addiction is a thing in the mind, not the brain, the mind. It's a state of mind. It's a state of belief that something external controls you. So you need another thing called recovery that's external to you to control you, like meetings and things like that. So this is a heavy concept, but it's incredibly simple because recovery is complex because it's a distraction to the thing you want. What the freedom model says is, why do you want it? And maybe you could want something else more and move on. Did I make that clear?
I thought so. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
It like that is inconceivable to people because they've tied recovery to everything in life. And my biggest pet peeve of late is really how recovery means becoming a perfect person. And meeting some standard that the average non-recovering person does not have to meet. You have to be cooking the right food. I mean, that's part of it. Like you literally have to be cooking the right food. That's in recovery programs.
Yeah.
You have to be involved in your community. That's part of the definition of recovery put out by Betty Ford Hazelden Institute.
Good God.
That you have to be involved in your community. What does that mean? Does the average person, so many people are not involved in their communities. They work, they make money, and then they do things for their family. You know what I mean? Like, or with their friends or whatever. You know what I mean? They don't live up to this standard of the perfect citizen. Citizenship is part of the Betty Ford definition of recovery. You have to be doing exercises, being physically fit, all of these things. You're supposed to have balance in your life. I know I rant about this a lot, but the average person has no balance. Human beings can't. An object in motion is never really in balance, right? And so it's fine to not be in balance, to not be that perfect person.
But then you say that stress is a cause of relapse. And so that sounds like a pretty stressful way to live, Betty Ford. I'm just saying.
You have to be doing all the right things. You have to be in the PTA. You have to be like all these things. It's so dumb.
You know all that. Let me tell you, that was pretty damn stressful.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned this, Steve. Back when I was doing the follow-up studies in the early years, I tracked, by permission, all of my guests for the first about 10 to 12 years.
That's right.
And we had that whole recovery thing built into the model. It's just super embarrassing to me now.
It is.
But I'll tell you, research has a tendency to give you the truth, right?
It does.
So I found that a lot or a good majority of the people that were doing well after they left the retreat didn't do any of what I told them to do.
They didn't follow their goals.
They didn't have a purpose-driven life. They were just like, dude, I was really tired of sticking a needle in my arm, and I moved on. And I kept hearing this. And the only thing that we were doing was teaching people in those days, on top of all the superfluous stuff, what was the thread? And it was, hey, you can get over a problem and your preference can change. We didn't say it in that exact way, but it was that same message.
Yeah, liking drugs and alcohol is temporary.
Yeah, and that you can be happier making a change to it.
Yeah.
So when people caught on to that, they were like, oh, that makes sense. And then they followed their own intuition. And human beings are very good problem solvers unless you teach them not to be. Okay. So I just gave them permission to problem solve. Yeah. I didn't know I did that. I didn't try to do that. I just knew what I was doing. And so the people moved on, but they didn't live purpose. Some did. Some had extraordinary experiences in their lives. But statistically speaking, in the general population, that happens. You have those type of personalities. But then the vast majority of people just live relatively mundane lives where they
had normal life problems.
Yeah, and they're happy.
They weren't,
and they had tragedy.
Yes,
absolutely. They had stress. They had poverty. They had disease. They had all the things that are part and parcel with this thing called the human condition that makes it difficult to live.
Yes.
And they were sober, and many were moderating successfully. And I was wrong. So I had all these plans of recovery. It was so elaborate, I can't even tell you. It was so ridiculous. And nobody was doing it. And then I was like, oh, I can just stop all that. And let's just concentrate on
the thing that they came here for, which is let me figure out how to get over the problem.
And that's important because a lot of people they're expecting or they're asking for exercises, tools, homework, this kind of thing. They're expecting that out of the freedom model. And we have to say, well, yes and no. Tools, sort of. Understanding is tools. Information is tools, right? So to some degree, yeah, but we're not going to have any gimmicks of do A, B, and C, check off all the right boxes, and you recover. And in fact, that's a hindrance to people to say, to give them the boxes to check off, the activities, the busy work. You can be very, what I call, passively active when you're seeking treatment or recovery, which is there's a lot of things to do that don't ever really address. So you feel like you're doing things, and then you still want to use, and you use, and you're like, well, I'm doing all the things, it ain't working. So, you just like continue to make your own choices. You don't change your mind about the drugs but you can put up this illusion that you are addressing it, and you're not, because it's a change of mind, and it isn't about Like I was a service work, enthusiast. I did it to the hill in a lot of ways. And I thought that's what you need to change. But like, ultimately, like you said, most everybody did not really do that, follow through with it at all. And they were fine. And I had to lose this illusion. And it was very hard to let go of that service work was what I needed to change me.